A plasma torch is linked by a spindle to the centering disc. Its spindle holds the torch at a precise distance so that a perfect circle can be cut out. The blank is cut out as close to the edge of the copper sheet as possible to minimize waste. Once cut, the blank is examined. The plasma cutting has left the edges rough. To smooth them, the copper blank is clamped in a lathe. The blank is then centered between the clamping chocks. The one on the left is in the shape of a mold of the final pan, which will be used later. It's checked to ensure it's positioned correctly. Then, after lubricating, a cutting tool is moved against the spinning blank and trims the circumference. The rim of the copper blank is then filed to make it smooth and even. The edge is finished using a fine grit paper. With the imperfections removed, the copper blank is unlikely to crack as it's formed into a saucepan with sloping sides. A roller is now pressed against the blank so it conforms to the form of the mold-shaped chuck we saw earlier. This process is called metal spinning. One person moves the roller across the copper blank, while the other applies pressure. The pan has to be shaped in 8 to 10 passes. The forming process has left fine lines on the surface, so as it continues to spin, it's sanded smooth. Next, a cutting tool is lubricated to prevent friction and overheating as it trims the rim of the saucepan to its final height. The cutting leaves the edges very sharp, so again, these are filed smooth. The copper saucepan is ready for the cast iron handle. Cast iron has less thermal conductivity than copper, so the heat from the pan will travel more slowly up the handle. The handle is tightly clamped in position to the saucepan. Then rivet holes are drilled through both the iron handle and the copper pan. The clamp is removed and the handle temporarily bolted to the pan. This stabilizes it for the drilling of the second rivet hole. A copper rivet is then inserted in the second hole from the inside of the pan. Its tail is heated to soften it. A pneumatic hammer is then used to flatten the rivet, after which the temporary bolt is removed and the second rivet is installed. Next, the pan is heated over an intense flame that melts a tin bar onto the saucepan's bottom. This molten tin is then spread evenly over the insides with a cotton rag that's been saturated with flux. The flux cleans the copper and allows the tin to flow more smoothly. The lining will prevent acidic foods from reacting with the copper. The heat used to melt the tin has caused discoloration and blemishes. These are removed using a cotton buffing wheel and a polishing compound, which eventually brings out the copper's high sheen. This copper saucepan is now ready for the stove. But first, the company logo is stamped into the bottom. A couple of hours in the making, a copper pan should last at least a century. And if it's well cared for, it shouldn't show its age. Sadly, not like the chef.